So hello friends, welcome to the first Dart coding challenge. This particular challenge is called Square and Sum, and it's an 8KU. So this is a beginner level. 8KU basically means that it's beginner level. So as you are doing it to 7 and so on till you get to 1. So I'm going to be doing these challenges in Dart. It's a series of challenges that I'm going to be removing a couple number of videos from beginner to intermediate to expert level in that, and hopefully after that we're going to build some awesome apps in Flutter which is built on that. So based on doing these challenges, you'll be very proficient in Flutter because you'll be familiar with the syntax of whatever it's built on, which is that. So without further ado, let's start. So this one says complete the square sum function so that it squares each number passed into it and then sums the results together. So for example, for a list with 1, 2 and 2, it should return 9 because 1 squared plus 2 squared plus 2 squared is 9. That means because 2 squared is 4 plus 4, 2 squared plus 1 squared, 4 plus 4 plus 1 is 9. Hopefully that is understood, but in case you've not understood, let's do one more example down here. So we have the list which is passed is 1 and 2, giving 5, because 1 squared is 1 and 2 squared is 4, so 4 plus 1 is 5. So how are we going to tackle this? The first thing we're going to do is iterate through the past list. The second thing we're going to do is to square each element in the list. And the third thing we're going to do is to sum up the squared elements. And the last thing we're going to do is to return the sum of the squares. Now, I'm thinking of 2 ways of doing this, but there are definitely more than 2. There may be even 10 or 20 because programming is very dynamic. So based on your preference, you can choose whichever route you want to do. So I'm going to do 2 methods. I'm going to do 2 methods basically. One will be much simpler and the other one will be a bit harder, but it's more efficient. So let's begin with the first method. So in the first method, the first thing you're going to do is to initialize a variable. We call it sum. We give it a value of 0 because this will be our counter for the list. So for each squared element, after it is squared, we're going to add it to this sum over here. So in the end, we're going to return the value of sum. So the next thing is to iterate through the past list. There's still a number of ways of doing this. You can use a for loop. So you'll say for I is 0, I is less than the length of the list. Then you add the value of I and you write your syntax below. But for me, I'm going to use a Dart method. It's called for each. It comes in handy in situations like this because what it basically does, it simplifies looping a list. Then it gives you every element of the list. So it goes something like this. So you take the name of the list, which is numbers, and dot. Then we write for each. Then it takes a callback me put a semicolon there. Element. So the syntax can be a bit confusing, but once you get used to it, it becomes pretty much very intuitive. So what is happening here is this for each it will iterate through whichever list is passed here, and whatever value you give it here, you can call it any name. You can call it element, you can call it whatever you think about it. I'm going to name it element. So for each element, so in the first iteration, if you can go back here to the example, this value here, element, will contain the value 1. So you can do whatever you want with it. In the second iteration, it will contain 2. In the third, stop there because this list only has 3 values. So what do you want to do here? The next thing we want to do is to square each element in the list. So element as is passed, element. How do you square an element or a value? We times it with itself, element. So now for every iteration we have a squared element. For every iteration this element will be squared. But that's not the end. We also want to sum up the squared elements for each iteration also. So what we can do here is pretty much we can do the sum, is this sum over here is equals whatever value will be in sum plus the square of each element. I hope you're getting. Please if write in the comment section below if maybe I'm going a little bit too fast, or maybe you're not getting. So the sum, whatever will be here, it will start at 0. So for the first iteration it will be sum is equals to 0. Sum is 0 plus the first element, let's say here will be 1 squared. So it will hold. So sum for that time it will hold 1. So for the next iteration in the example, the element will be 2. So it will come down here. It will square 2 board mass. It will square 2. 2 times 2 will be 4. Then it will add sum. Whatever value is in sum was 1. So sum now will hold 5. And for the last iteration is still a 2. The element will hold 2. It will come down here. It will square the 2. It will be a 4. Remember the sum was holding 5. So it will be 5 plus 4. It will equals to 9. And the loop is over. So what do you want to do next? So what you're remaining next is just to return the value of sum. And remember this this function requires an integer. So we come down here outside of the for each, we return sum. So because it's an integer, we need to convert it back to an integer. Remember it was a number. And the semicolon. Hopefully we have done it right. Let's test and see how we go from there. Oh, it failed. Okay. So why did it fail? It expected a semicolon. Okay, for just to be safe, let me wrap this into brackets, because brackets are always evaluated first. Whenever you don't know which operation is going, whether it's multiplication or division, whatever you want to be evaluated first, you can wrap it into brackets. So let's test for the second time. Hopefully this time it will work. Yes, so it has passed the first few cases. So let's attempt. Yes, as you can see, it has passed all the cases. There were 41 in total. Hopefully you have learned something. I've learned something too. And don't forget semicolons. Anyway, join me in the next video as I show you the other way to tackle this problem using maps and reduce functions, which are pretty interesting, and they're pretty fast. They'll reduce your code by a few lines, and they'll get you into list methods, which are mostly used in Flutter, because we'll be using lists a lot in Flutter. So thank you, and see you in the next lesson. Have a great day. Have a great night.